On to our first segment. Thank you very much. Was Dylan Morris the right pick for QB? I believe so. Nathan, what do you think?
I'm tended to lean towards agreeing with you. I mean, just taking a quick look at his stat line. I mean, he was 14 for 24, 141 yards, 0 touchdowns, but then he also had 0 interceptions, 0 fumbles. So he was really cautious with the ball. He didn't make any boneheaded mistakes, didn't do anything that could cost them the game, and that's really important in a game like it was against Oregon State, which it was much closer than a lot of people had originally anticipated. So overall, he played a very conservative game, which that probably has in part to do with the game plan that the Huskies had. I mean, they ran the ball close to 50 times, so it was a heavily run game oriented game the entire time, and that in part was just due to the weather. It was cold, it was wet at times during the game, and overall, I look at it like he won the game. He had no big mistakes. He also had a few drops from his receivers, which would have really helped his stat lines. I mean, just off the memory, the third down drop by, can't remember his name, on the first drive, which then led to the horrible punt that happened. And then there was another drop by Rome Odunze in the end zone later on in the game. So a few errors by his receivers kind of hurt his stat line, but overall, I think he played solid football. What's your take on it all?
I mean that's really the same takeaways for me. I mean his stat list. If you just look at stats alone, like he didn't win the game really. I mean you could kind of argue he was there for it and whatnot, but I mean he also, like, I think the bigger point there is definitely that he didn't lose the game. Like, that if they were to have lost and he still had this stat line, like, I wouldn't have been upset with his performance. I mean, this was his very first college football game under lights. Like, that's insane. Like, this was true freshman, very first game starting, very first game ever. Redshirt freshman, sorry. Very first college football game where he's starting like that, and then absolutely insane stat line for that, I think. I mean, like, he didn't blow anybody out of the water. He didn't drop like 28 for 35 attempts for like 100 and, for like 350 yards. Like, he didn't do that. But I mean, with the stat line he has, and personally, when I'm looking at it, like the 14 completions for out of 24 attempts for 141 yards, I look at that and say there should be 2 touchdowns there. Like, the kid has 3 touchdowns on the first game already. It was a drop. I mean, I'm going to talk about it a little bit later, but there's 2 missed catches, or drops, I should say, that absolutely should have been touchdowns. And I think in a very similar mindset to Jimmy Lake in his press conference, in his presser right after that game, he was talking about like his leadership skills that he was showcasing, like both in game and during the camp preseason start, the way and the style in which he operates their offense and kind of tweaks it a little bit to make it his own. And I think the biggest point here, the key takeaway from all of this, is that he makes he made very, very limited mistakes during fall camp, and that translated to the game where he made almost none, if not any at all, mistakes during the course of those 4 quarters. And I think another bright spot, is the fact that the kid has legs. He has legs. He can run the ball. Lake said it so himself that depending on the defense they're going up against that week, like, he's going to be rushing more. And so I think Dylan Morris is the right pick for QB. I mean, when it comes down to it, Dylan Morris right now, I think, is right where he needs to be. He's right where the Huskies need him to be, because he's going to develop over the next couple of years and this season and become a phenomenal quarterback for the Huskies.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on it. I mean, he clearly, in practice, he won the job. So he clearly had to have outperformed the other 3 quarterbacks that were battling for the position. A lot of people talked about towards the end Kevin Thompson maybe winning the job, but here week 1, he wasn't actually suited up. He had a injury. Won't get speculating into that. Don't know when it happened. I mean, maybe that helped. I mean, depending on how long he's been injured for. But then getting back to Dylan Morris, yeah, you said he did a great job. I mean, no turnovers, nothing like that. He didn't hurt them. I mean, he didn't do a lot to help them win, I guess. It was mostly the game plan. He followed the game plan of just running the ball down Oregon State and just dominating the ground game. What more can you ask for than a great run game, really?
I mean, the great run game is where the passing game is built, in my opinion. You can't pass well over the course of a game without having a solid run game.